The last week, this week, next week, we'll be sharing some of the techniques of ego transcendence given by Swami Kriyanandaji in the book Sadhu Beware. And I'm going to reread something I read in week number 1 of this month, just to emphasize the real power and importance of this approach for everybody. The book Sadhu Beware is not just for sadhus, it's for all of us. And Swamiji writes, the first duty of every soul is to release the hold that ego consciousness has upon it. All other spiritual practices are subservient to this one supreme obligation. I address ego transcendence, therefore, as the first and indeed the only challenge on the spiritual path, whether one be a renunciate, a householder, or living for God in some other way. The only challenge on the spiritual path, that's how important it is. So in this book, he gave, I think, 33 techniques for ego transcendence. And we have a lot of techniques and practices. I'll just touch on reviewing perhaps an approach that we can take in using these techniques. And then Vineet and I will talk about some of the specific techniques that Swamiji gave us. But when we use techniques and practices, number one, we can't just do them mechanically. We really have to tune into them and meditate on them, try to apply them, try to understand them. Number two, they're not just sort of boxes to tick off. Okay, I've done number 3 and now I'll go to number 4, and then you put the book aside and say, yep, I've done that. Well, in fact, these are lifelong practices. I myself keep coming back to these techniques of ego transcendence. And every time I review them, I just see, oh yeah, I need to work on that one. That one is just tripping me up sometimes. Yeah, that describes me, what he's talking about. And so it's very, very good to make this a lifelong practice and come back to these techniques. Don't obsess over them, have fun over them. Now, when we do techniques, we should be looking for results. Otherwise, why do practices and techniques? And so the particular results that we're looking for to show that we're doing it effectively with these techniques of ego transcendence is a growing inner freedom. It's also just a growing feeling of divine joy. Joyful inner freedom is the way Swamiji talks about it. If we find that we're doing all these techniques and we're really kind of working on ourselves seriously, and we start thinking sometimes, boy, I'm really making a lot of progress with these techniques of ego transcendence, then it's a sign we're going in the opposite direction than what Swamiji intended. And so do it with joy, look for the results to be this freedom, and have fun with it, and don't sort of get overly obsessive with it, because that can be self-contracting, self-involving, and even ego reinforcing. In the end, all of the practices that we do are working towards transcending the ego, including meditation, especially meditation. That's why Swamiji says ego transcendence is subservient to everything else, because it serves and supports all of our practices: meditation, guru seva, divine friendship, giving to others, and devotion, and all these things. So let's talk about a couple of these techniques, and then Vineet will share some. So number 9 out of these techniques, Swamiji writes, don't try constantly to explain or define for others' gratification who and what you are. Let your actions and your inner reality speak for you. If others misunderstand you, wear their misunderstanding as a mental feather in your cap. Reflect that God alone really understands us anyway. And Swamiji, I think, just you feel the joy and humor that he uses with these practices. And it's partly when we are really just there to please God and not worrying about what others think, when we are simply ourselves and who and what we are. This is something that I've seen just over the years with myself. Be nice to learn these lessons sooner, but I think some of these lessons just take time, which is that growing up, we try to define ourselves by all of our peers. There's a lot of peer pressure to fit in, to be a certain way, to act a certain way. And so we really do spend too much time trying to please others. And over the years, some people learn more quickly, some people learn more slowly. We find that we're not going to please everybody. You try to please one in group or one particular person, and you may succeed, but then that very same action will displease another person. There's a saying that I have found very helpful, which is that it's better to please God and Guru and displease the entire world than to make everyone else in the world happy, but to displease the Guru and God. And so try to please God and the Guru. Be yourself, act for them, work for them, do seva for them. It doesn't mean we can ignore people and ignore their needs. In fact, just the opposite. By serving the God in each person, by serving the Guru, by seeing the Guru in each person that we're serving, we awaken that light in the world. And we also start to dissolve the tie and the bondage that this little ego, this little self holds over us. Number 19, Swamiji writes, and this really affirms what I was saying earlier, that this is the fruits when you're doing this in the right way. Live always in a spirit of joyful freedom from ego consciousness. And when there is a dissolving of the ego consciousness, there's just a natural, expanding, rising spirit of joyful freedom, joyful inner freedom when that ego dissolves. And it's just such a funny thing. We spend so much of our lives holding on to that ego and thinking that if I just can be important, or if others, like me, or if I can succeed in the eyes of others, then I'll be happy. And we really define ourselves and hold on to that ego as thinking that having just a healthy, strong, admired personality, that our happiness will expand and grow. But it's just the opposite. We will find that as this ego dissolves in very dynamic, again, Guru Seva, devotion, devotional self-offering and meditation, and practices like Kriya Yoga, we find that this spirit of joyful freedom just grows and grows and grows. So now Vineet will share a couple more techniques of ego transcendence from Swamiji.
Thank you, Devashiji. And somehow, I feel very delighted or glad when we are talking on or sharing on the topic of ego transcendence. It just seems to my mind mentally like now we are speaking business. I just have that kind of mental, you could say, thought process when it goes or talks about ego transcendence. So I'm very glad that we are connecting on this topic. And while Devashiji was sharing about the ninth topic, which he was sharing about, pleasing people and how sometimes there's pressure of the peer. These words from a friend came to my mind, and I thought I'll just share. And he said, we can please some of the people, maybe all the time. We might be able to please all the people, maybe some of the time, but we can never please all the people all the time. So why waste time on trying to please everyone? Rather please God, and that way we'll be able to please everyone. Maybe not, and these are not necessarily following this, not my friend's words, but I'm just adding that if we can't please everyone all the time, why not just please God? And in a higher sense, then we will be pleasing everyone in their higher self. So, anyways, I wanted to start today by just sharing a funny little story which Swami Kriyanandaji has shared from time to time in his life. This was basically there was a group of women, and they were talking to each other about their sons. And one woman remarked that, my son, he's a priest, and everyone calls him father. And later on, the next woman, she remarked, well, my son is a cardinal, and everyone calls him Your Grace. And then the next lady, she heard this and she said, well, my son, he's the Pope, and everyone calls him His Holiness. And when it came to the turn of the last woman, and she didn't know how could she top this off, and then she said, well, my son, he's He's this tall, he's very tall, he's so big, and when everyone sees him, they call, oh my God. And so basically, I wanted to now read this joke, had not come in without any purpose. I wanted to read a point from Swami Kriyananda's book Sadhu Beware, where he says, never place yourself mentally in competition with others. Now, it's of course a funny story, and but there's always a tendency, and I found myself many times, when a friend shares a wonderful joke, and I'm mentally thinking, oh, you know what? This also happened, and sharing an even better joke. Well, let sometimes the other person have fun with the joke, and you don't have to always, I mean, not you, I mean, I don't have to always come up with a better joke, and it happens in a very subconscious way. And I've found myself when tuning into this that what am I trying to really exert? If there's something really wonderful to add, then yes, why not share it? But one need not have the last word and the best joke to end with. So just a silly little point, but how ego and Maya can, it's just so subtle and it can catch us. Anyways, I just remembered this joke last minute and I thought, well, this is worth sharing it. So I wanted to share with you, and do try to be aware and see if you can just let go and have your friend perhaps the limelight of sharing a joke and letting them be. But well, for now, I'm telling the joke and you cannot top it up. So I'll have the last word. So now coming to the next point, which I wanted to share was Swamiji writes, and this is the 21st point from this book on techniques of ego transcendence. And he said, it is not humility to tell yourself, I can't. Remember, God can do anything. If you give him the chance, moreover, he can do anything through you. Ask him for the inspiration, the guidance, and the strength to do whatever you must do. As Yogananda put it, pray in this way: I will reason, I will act, but guide thou my reason, will, and activity in everything I do. In other words, it's not humility to say, like Swamiji says, I can't. And many times when we come to the topic of ego transcendence, and I found myself also that my idea of renunciation or giving up the ego might seem like, okay, I will not act at all. And as a result, I will not accrue any karma. And as a result, I'm not affirming any ego by saying I can't. But honestly, it takes equal amount of energy to say I am better at this and I can do whatever I want, as much as it takes to say I can't. And as Paramhans Yogananda ji said, it is not, I can't quote him correctly, but he said you should neither have superiority nor inferiority complex. And whatever we do, we should do it with the presence of God, feeling that he is acting through you. And this has been something very interesting in my life. When before I became a monk myself, I think I had to learn this lesson the hard way. And I was just ready. I was preparing for my chartered accountancy and I was ready to just give it up when I found my spiritual path. And I said, oh, sab moh maya hai. Everything is maya. Why bother studying? Why put out the energy? And I was very ready to not do anything, pursue my studies. But somehow Master made sure that I got this practical knowledge, perhaps before I took my next step. And if you have ever read Masters Paramhans Yogananda ji's Renunciates Valiant Vow, he said the words which he uses there are in, let's see, in fulfilling thy wishes, I will be ambitious, something like that. So basically, in fulfilling thy wishes, I will be ambitious. And the word ambitious doesn't really go hand in hand with ego renunciation, not renunciation, somehow ego transcendence is what we are talking about. So they don't go hand in hand, at least mentally in the mind, but they can go hand in hand if we are ambitious for the right thing, if we are ambitious to serve the divine, serve God, serve Guru. And that way it can actually free us, rather than saying, oh, what a miserable thing to do, or why at all waste time? It's all Maya, anyways. Why not focus on, oh, I will be ambitious in doing this, and whatever dharma, God, Divine Mother, the Guru has given us, say I can. And even if you feel that you can't, say I can't do it, as Swami Kriyananda ji would say, but God can do it through me, or my Guru can do it through me. And you will find that whatever you're trying to do, you will find an uplifted way of fulfilling your dharma. And just to finish the story of my, chartered accountancy, not that it's a big thing, but it was funny when I got my result. All my friends called to congratulate me, which is the case, it happens. But I just felt that I wasn't doing it. I was just trying to do what my guru wanted me to do. And whenever people would congratulate me, even without knowing, I was basically telling them, "Oh yeah, it's wonderful how God did it. It's wonderful how God did it." And after a few calls, a friend really stopped me. He said, "Didn't you do anything? What do you mean by God did it?" And I was like, that's interesting. And very rarely in my life, I've had such situations where I didn't feel that I was the one doing it, but God was the one, rather, God was the one acting through me. And you will find that, friends, in your life, that again and again, when come with a difficulty, or when even when you can do something very well, when I know I'm very good at doing this, many times find that rather the inspiration goes down, because I know how this is done, or I know what this is all about. But when I could say, yes, I can do a few things, but why not let God do it through us? I will reason, I will, and I'll also act. But guide thou my reason, will, and activity in everything I do. And this way we can really overcome the sense of I'm doing it, but rather, yes, I'm doing it because I have to do it and you have asked me to do it. And then later you are guiding me in doing this. Just to end this on this point with another story, Paramahansa Yogananda ji always told Swami Kriyananda that, when you're lecturing, feel that God is flowing through you and it's God really talking through you and the gurus. And Swami Kriyananda ji, he was very practical and he wanted to test everything, whatever he learned, to make it experiential for his own self. And one day while delivering a satsang, just in the middle of the satsang, it crossed his mind that Master told him, Guruji told him, his Guru told him, Yogananda ji, that allow God to talk through you. And he thought, well, if it's the job of the God and gurus to talk through me, my job must be to just shut up and let them do whatever they have to do. And so he just silenced himself and waited for God to speak through him. And he waited and he waited and he waited. And guess what? God did not speak at that point of time. And he wasn't nervous or anything. People thought he had frozen because of being nervous. But he was just absolutely calm, waiting for God to speak through him. But his friends, who knew him very well, they were perspiring for him and they were wondering, oh my God, when is he going to speak? But then he realized at that point that he has to act and he has to let God act through him. And we have to do our part also in doing our activity. And as just to finish that with that quote again, I will reason, will, I will act, but guide thou my reason, will, and activity in everything I do. I'll just end with reading one more thing, which is, make it a point, this is point 23, make it a point not to feel badly when you make a mistake. Obviously, it would compound the mistake if you insisted you didn't make it. When you do err, however, acknowledge the error calmly and cheerfully, if not openly before others, then at least inwardly to yourself. If possible, don't even say to yourself, I made this mistake. Rather, the mistake got made. God is the doer, give it to Him, the blame as well as the credit for everything. Then try ever more earnestly to attune your every thought and action to His will. And just another thing, as Devashiji was saying, that when you're working through it, don't see yourself in a very tight way that, oh, I'm either doing too well, but being very serious about it, or okay, this is too bad, I'm so bad at it, and I'm not progressing at all, and beating ourselves. If a mistake happens, just be calm about it. Don't take it not in a light way, but rather take it in a calm and even-minded way. And whatever it is, give it to God and then work with Him, work through Him. And you'll find then the mistakes, rather than behooving on a consciousness that I'm a terrible person and I have such a big ego, rather it can be an opportunity saying that, well, good or bad, it's all you, Divine Mother, and I give it back to you. And that way you'll find that a sense of freedom comes in, and it becomes easier to transcend this little self into this big expanded higher self. With that, I would like to pass it on to Devashiji to share more.
Thank you, Vineet. I'll read Swamiji's number 26. When you move to a new position in your work or living situation, carry no mental baggage with you. Have no expectations. Visualize receiving no recognition for anything you've done, and perhaps being shoved to the bottom of whatever ladder you must now climb. Then visualize yourself accepting that status cheerfully and willingly. It isn't likely that you are ever to receive such treatment. It is very freeing, however, to be able to feel that you need that you need nothing from anyone. Make God your only support and joy. I'll just read that last part. It is very freeing to be able to feel that you need nothing from anyone. Make God your only support and joy. And again, this just comes back to being yourself and just do the best you can, put out the best possible energy in carrying out thy wishes. I will be ambitious, as Master said, and asked his renunciates to say. This is why Swamiji, he rarely, if ever, used the word ego renunciation. It was always ego transcendence, because we're not trying to kill the ego or crush it or suppress it or get rid of it. It's by transmuting it and almost expanding it into God by giving all of our thoughts and our actions to God and not worry about what we are getting from other people. Yes, we serve other people, we serve the God in other people. So this isn't all ego transcendence and action to ignore others. It really is a way of just becoming free in ourselves. And you will find that the more that you do this, that the energy of the divine is more easily able to flow through you. And we are able much more easily and much more powerfully able to help others in a very deep way. And this is it's a process. And I just want to encourage everyone to work on this as a lifetime practice. You know, people watch the different acharyas at Ananda, and people come to Ananda village sometimes and they see these really great souls. And they think, well, gosh, I'm not like that. And how am I ever going to be like that? Because look at them, and I'm here, and they just, you know, there's a temptation to go and turn the other way. But people have to realize that these great souls that are part of Ananda for many years, they didn't come great. They worked at it. But by working at it step by step, day by day, week by week, year by year, the ego just naturally dissolves. Every time you meditate and just offer yourself into the light of God with devotional self-offering, as Swami Kriyanandaji encouraged, with even the practice of a technique such as Kriya Yoga. With devotional self-offering, it starts to dissolve this little self, and it starts to connect us to this much more expanded and divine self, who is really our true nature, by transcending and rising above this little ego. And it's a lifelong practice, but you'll find that incremental progress, step by step, day by day, meditation by meditation. This is why we have a daily practice, morning and evening, because I swear every time, you know, Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita said no spiritual effort goes to waste. Worldly effort can go to waste, but no spiritual effort ever goes to waste, because every time we make a sincere spiritual effort and start to work at offering ourselves to God, praying, giving, loving, serving, sharing, tuning into the Guru, all these things, every time we do that, it starts to dissolve the hold that the ego has on us. And it starts to pop this little bubble of ego, and it starts to expand and become one with the divine consciousness. And you will find, and I guarantee it, that if you work at it day by day, year by year, decade by decade, you'll see that these things really have the power to dissolve and free you from ego consciousness in one lifetime. That's the power of all these tools all working together, and just this overall approach, which is a very well-rounded and balanced approach. It's not something that we Swamiji talks about someone who was writing about the going into samadhi from an intellectual way. And this teacher wrote that you go into samadhi, the yogi goes into samadhi through a paroxysm of effort. And it's like this intense effort, just you finally try so hard and just you blow up your brains or something. I don't know what he was talking about, but it's actually a relaxing of this little self, because what is it that holds us together, that holds the ego together? There's tension there that's holding it together. And this tension comes from thinking about ourselves, thinking about what other people are thinking of us. And so a lot of these practices are simply just about relaxing and being who we are. And just, it's one of my favorite quotes of Swamiji, where he said one time, I swear he said this, I heard it. No one has found it written yet, but I did hear it. He said, "To thine own funky self be true." And he said it with a smile and just saying, be yourself, just accept who you are, work with your own nature. But by offering your own nature, even your own funky parts and your nature, by offering regularly, day in, day out, into the divine, we become, clay turns into gold. And so these parts of us that are not perfect, it's not that they even go away, they just become lifted up and transmuted and become something beautiful and something great. And it's still a uniqueness that each of the saints has and that we all will have, even when we become fully liberated. You see, not all the saints just become carbon copies of God or something like that. I don't know how to express that, but they retain a particular unique, beautiful expression of the divine that is really what the divine intended for each one of us to find our own way there through our own nature, through our own issues, our own faults, our own seeming faults, by transmuting them and just lifting them up. And God will take care of the rest. Our part is to offer ourselves into the light, into that light every day, in every way that we can. And that light starts to bless, transmute, and turn clay into gold. As that chant says, touch me but once, and I will change all my clay into thy gold. And this is the process of ego transcendence, of transformation of the little self into the divine self. And this is how we do it. We're very grateful that these great teachers and Swamiji was able to make it so clear and so doable and easy, even if you really think about it and work at it. So let's practice these techniques of ego transcendence. There will be some more next week. And may we become all completely free of ego, of this little self, and become divine, because that really is our true nature. This little ego self is just sort of mud covering the divine self. It is there. Our part is to uncover it, reveal it. And again, it comes by just offering this little self into the great fire of divine love and grace that is God, in meditation, in service, and in all these things that we do. So may their grace, may their blessings be added to all of our efforts and free us even in this lifetime. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week with some more.